Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me at the back? Well, friends, it's nice seeing you this afternoon, and you must have been tired at the fag end of the day hearing so many speeches. Is that right? No. I'm not going to bore you. They want me to talk on a new subject called Western medicine, which they call as modern medicine, vis-a-vis the ancient Indian system of medicine. To know the difference, you must first know the difference between human body, how it works, and how it can be mended when it goes wrong. Science is change. If it doesn't change, it's not science. Anything that doesn't change is religion. What changes is science. And the science is, today's science doesn't agree with what we all learned and you still learn in colleges. The conventional physics, chemistry, and biology. But the new physics, quantum physics, has uprooted the whole thing. And that makes it easier for you to understand the human body. Now we think in the Western medicine, in Western medical non-science, we think human body is made up of different parts. Like, you have automobile engineers, mechanical engineers with different parts. You make a car, first fix the chassis, then the body, then the engine, and things like that. That's how it is made. So that is not how the human body is made. If you understand in evolutionary biology, you are the one cell, one single nucleated cell when you're made on your mother's womb on the first day. That's called the zygote. That's the first nucleated cell. And this cell, one cell, divides and divides and divides. And today, you are a colony of 120 trillion such cells. And each one of these cells is a human being, capable of doing all that you do. So much so, you are not I, you are we. You are a colony of so many people. This difference, please remember that when you say I and that I, that feeling, illness starts. When you have we, that feeling, wellness comes in. And this is where no human being is independent. Remember that? However big you are, however money you have, you still are dependent on others, because inside your body, for every single cell that is human, you have 10 times cells which are germ cells. Without these germ cells, you cannot survive at all. Between the mouth and the anus, you have 10 to the power 13 germs. And in the mouth, you have 3 billion germs. And if even a few germs die, you get completely disorganized and disease starts there. So germs are not our enemies, germs are our friends. In short, we are germs. For 120 trillion cells, you have 360 trillion germ cells. And we inherit from our parents because we say, oh, you're like your father, you're like your mother, etc. The inheritance from, genetic inheritance from the parents is just 23,000 human cells in a genome. But you have the same genome, you have 2.5 trillion germ genes, metabolomes, germinomes, virinomes, and all kinds of things. And you can imagine the contribution from your parents to you is 23,000 divided by 2.5 trillion. So hardly matters. So it's not the genes that run your body as you think in the olden science. In the new biology, it is the environment that runs it. That is where it's very important to know the environment is very important for disease or disease correction or treatment. Now in the Western medicine, what we do is we have quick fixes. Supposing you have a disease, immediately we give a quick fix and we think it cures the problem. No, it doesn't. Actually, it creates another problem. In short, I always tell my students, there is no pill for every ill, but there is an ill following every pill. Did you get this? That's called adverse drug reactions. As a matter of fact, audit now shows in the West that the leading cause of death is not cancer or heart attack, but adverse drug reactions, which is called ADR. Because we know in the Western non-science, one drug for one disease under ideal circumstances, which is called evidence-based medicine. But unfortunately, in a patient, we don't give one drug. Some of the patients, if you see, it's a laundry list of drugs, about 18, 15 drugs. And there is no science to say what happens when you combine two drugs. But do you know how people are alive? A study showed that when you give one tablet to a patient and tell him to take it daily, the remembrance or the compliance is only 73%. 27% forget, they don't take correctly. Now when you make it 2 tablets a day, it falls to 42%. When you make it more than 3 tablets a day, it comes down to 22%, which means a 78% of people whom you prescribe this multiple laundry list, they don't take those medicines. If they did, they wouldn't be here. Because every single pill has, like for example, I'll give you a very small thing. Every painkiller that you take, what's called NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, can give you a heart attack up to 5 years. From the time you take the medicine, up to the next 5 years, you can get a heart attack. Somebody says, oh, he's fine, he's very healthy. Why did he get a heart attack? He must have been taking every day pain-killing drugs. If you have a headache, one pop a pill. If you have a backache, you pop a pill. And this also damages the kidney. One of the commonest causes for renal dialysis today are the NSAIDs, which damage the kidney. In short, the linear reductionist science of the West. Reductionism, I don't think for you people I should describe what is reductionism. We have to look at the human body as a whole. You can't take a bit and examine it. Like for example, somebody gets a cancer. What do? We take the biopsy of the cancer, a bit of the cancer, and then smear it on the glass slide. By then the cells are all distorted. Then stain it with the ursulin, hemoxilin. So you poison the cells. And then when they dries up, you put it under the microscope and look at it. Now the cells look horrible because they're distorted. But you can't know what that cell is. Because a normal cell and a cancer cell work alike. Remember that? I'll repeat that. A normal cell and a cancer cell work alike. And I don't know how anybody can kill a cancer cell without killing the normal cell. I'll give you an analogy. Supposing a bird comes into your house, a new bird comes into your house. To know what the bird is, where did it come from, where is it going, what's going to happen to the bird, what we do in the Western science is kill the bird, biopsy it, and then put it in the microscope and study the cells and say, this bird came from so and so. That's exactly what we do in cancer. When we say we have a cancer which we describe as metastatic, anaplastic, this, that, etc., doesn't tell you anything about the cancer. So a great biologist, Nobel laureate, Albert Szent-Györgyi wrote, I quote, I do not know what cancer is because cancer cell works like an exactly normal cell. And I don't know the distinction between the two. And I don't know how to treat a cancer cell without killing the normal cell. See, this is where we are in Western reductionist medicine. Come to Ayurveda, the mother of all medical wisdoms in the world, probably one of the oldest, along with various other systems in the East, like Chinese, Tibetan, and also Tibetan, of course, is a part of the Indian system, but also the Egyptian system. Now, all these systems started long, long ago when this reductionist science did not come to us from the West. Reductionist science started in 1742 with that little boy, 17-year-old mathematician in René Descartes, who said, cogito ergo sum. Because I think I am. If he had understood it a little later and a little wider, he should have said, I am thinking and that's why I am able to live. What he says is, I run this world. This is the problem with us in reductionist science. This world in the new quantum physics worldview is much bigger than what you can grasp. In short, quantum physicists say we can comprehend much more than what we can grasp. The usual conventional science is due to your 5 senses. And that is not the science because 5 senses don't tell you anything. And what you know in conventional science is 5% of this world, 5%. And 95% you don't know. But when you come to quantum physics, you seem to know the whole lot. And Ayurveda is based on quantum physics worldview, which takes into consideration the whole world and your surroundings. And this is very important to know about anybody's illness or wellness. Because unless you know that, you will not be able to consider how to treat him. Or, I wouldn't want to use the word treat, how to manage an illness. So when once the human body is afflicted with an illness, we have to find out a lot of things. The most important part of the human body is his consciousness, which is called the mind in simple English. And where is the mind? Never mind. No, the mind is not in the brain. I just want you to remember that. Most of us think the mind is in the brain. The mind is not in the brain because brain is such a small thing, it can't hold mind. Mind is a huge thing. Mind is called consciousness, awareness. In Sanskrit, it is called gochara. Gochara. Sanskrit is a fantastic language which gives you a comprehensive idea of the subject. Gochara could also mean the path on which the cows walk. But gochara is the awareness, consciousness. And you have your own consciousness, which is a part of the universal consciousness. And this consciousness works. In short, your human body is just mind only. So mind is not in the brain, mind is in the body. And now quantum physics says matter is energy and energy is matter. E is equal to m. And this was known to the Indian science, including Ayurveda, for thousands of years. If you know this stanza in Upanishad, it says energy. That's energy is you are energy, and the body is energy, and body is not matter. And if any matter at the subtlest and subtlest and subtlest level. And I found one day there is no matter at all. And Hans Peter Dewar writes, I call this as E is equal to M as a duality. There is no duality between the two. And when you say it's a duality, he says, I am a child in front of these Indian sages who thousands of years ago called it as Advaita. And he so beautifully says, matter is energy, energy is matter. In this stanza, and he quotes that stanza, Bahirantascha bhutanam, it's inside and outside of everything. Charam acharamevacha, energy moves, but you all look solid. There's nothing solid about you. It's only maya, it's illusion. Your body is an illusion of your mind. And he says, Sukshmavate tavijnayam, it's so subtle that nobody can see it. Nobody can see an electron. Why can't you see an electron? Electronic students, why can't you see an electron? When you say you can't see God, if you got a BSc or a MSc, then you say God doesn't exist because I can't see him. But you have not seen an electron, and you describe the electron in several ways and got Nobel Prize. You accept that, right? You can't see an electron because to see anything, to see you, a few photons must leave you and hit my retina. Then only I can see you. I become aware of your existence. But if one photon leaves an electron, it no longer becomes an electron. So nobody can see an electron. That's what it says. Sukshmavate tavijnayam. Durastam. When you don't know, you don't know. Cha, aniketa chatat. When you know, it's inside you. That's about energy. And this energy is you. And this energy is the one that when it's altered, you get disease. When it is normal and very nicely balanced, you are healthy. Now, this is the concept of Ayurveda. Ayurveda doesn't say there is a disease, you treat it. No. It says, swasthasya swastha rakshitam. Preserve the wellness of the healthy, which is very easy, cheap, and more profitable than treating a disease. But the Western medicine is after money. And for everything, we want money, we want to collect money, and we want to make money. And make money is our now problem. Western medical, Hippocrates was the father of Western medicine, said, do not make money in the sick room. Remember that? Do not make money in the sick room. But today what happens? If you are ill, you go to a corporate hospital, you see, you will come out with or without a disease, but without your properties. America is feeling the pinch in a big way, and now English NHS, where free medicine is given, is in real trouble. NHS is almost equal collapsing. So they want Eastern medicine to come into these places. That is why Ayurveda is becoming very popular in the West. I just came back from Germany a week ago, where Germans and all the Eastern European nations, they want to have Ayurvedic hospitals in their country. So they had called this meeting to get ideas as to how to go about it. And you will be surprised, in January we have a meeting in London, and in April we have got a meeting in Brussels. So all these places there now, because money has become very, very, very... Now there is no limit for Western medicine, quick fixes. Supposing everybody wants a heart transplant to be given to a heart patient, where will you get this from money? Where the money from? Everybody wants a liver transplant for liver disease, thinking that human body is a machine like the motor car, where if the carburetor is gone, you put a new carburetor. That doesn't happen in the human body. You will be surprised to know that this one cell that I told you that you wear when you are in mother's womb, that's called the zygote, that one cell divides into 120 trillion cells. But the beauty is, it doesn't fully divide. Only a partial wall comes in the cell, and 1 becomes 2. Another partial wall comes, 2 becomes 4. Another partial wall comes in 8, 16, 32, and so on and so forth. So much so, at the end of the day, when you are 120 trillion cells inside you, you are what is called a syncytium. You are just one sheet, and all cells are connected. You would be surprised. You take a brain cell and its genome and a heart cell and its genome, they're identical. Two cells, one in the brain, one in the heart, might have identical genome, which gives me a new idea, which I'm just having an idea. I have just put it as a hypothesis and published it, that if this happens, we don't have to get someone else's organ to transplant. We can get our own organs and transplant it to us, and those organs can grow. Like, for example, you need a small bit of the liver for liver transplant from someone else. It may be from your mother, father, husband, wife, or child, anybody. Instead of that, we probably can take a bit of the normal liver from your own part, your own body, and then transplant it to your deceased part of the liver. I'm just saying this speculation because we are all related. These are all connected. And these are not different cells that you are 120 trillion cells. The same cell which is divided. But because of what is called cosmic, morphic resonance. Morphic resonance is a word I don't want to explain because it's a very complicated word. Morphic resonance gives you the blueprint of every molecule to an atom. So when the energy and matter interchange in the human body, they do it 1024 times a minute. This is called the Planck's 1024 times a second, Max Planck constant. And that means each time the energy becomes matter, the energy knows the blueprint of the matter. And if you teach this energy to change the blueprint to a normal body, it becomes this is called quantum healing. If anyone of you want to know more about quantum healing, one of the professors of quantum physics in Eugene, in the United States, has written a book called Quantum Doctor. If you read that, it's a very nice book which tells you how to cure yourself. And this is the old Ayurvedic system, because Ayurveda believes in a human body as a closed system in systems biology, because you engineers understand systems biology. Closed system is a system where everything happens on its own like a geyser. You switch it on, water gets heated. When you don't use it, it gets cooled, and then it gets heated when you need it, and always you have hot water. But the open system is like an olden days bucket. A bucket of cold water, you want hot water for a bath, you put a heater yourself, and when the water is hot, you remove the heater. So you require an outside intervention for every mistake in the human body. That was the original thinking of Western medicine. But today in Ayurveda, and that is coming to the Western medicine also, that evolutionary biology tells us that a human system is a closed system, which when you are born, the system has got an ingrained doctor himself, which is called the immune system. So most of the time, if not all the time, this doctor cures you. But in case the doctor fails, then only symptoms come and you have to go to the artificial doctors like me. But normally, if you can keep your immune system good, and you will be absolutely fine without any outside intervention, because it's a closed system. Now, very interestingly, this concept is alien to Western medicine. Western medicine thinks it's an open system. For everything, I must interfere. No. So, Western system is bad, but you can't throw it out, lock, stock, and barrel. The water is bad, so you can't throw the baby away, because for quick fixes, emergency quick fixes, like I fall under the car, let us say, I break my bones. I can't say I'll take Ayurveda and do yoga and pranayama and get better. No, the bones will have to set. Supposing I become unconscious and I am taken to the intensive care unit, I require some intensive quick fixes. But mind you, this is only 2% of the sick population in a given day. 98% can make do with the Ayurveda-like alternate systems. There are so many other systems. It's not just Ayurveda, homeopathy, Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani. Unani is a fantastic thing which started in Arab countries, and it has done a lot of progress. So all these systems are good things. So there should not be a monopoly for one system. What we should have is a judicious combination of all systems, where emergency quick fixes come from modern medicine, Western medicine, and all other things come from various other systems. And we have put together a system which is called the future medicine, or what's called meta-medicine. Aristotle wrote physics first and then psychology next, and it's called metaphysics is psychology. Meta is after. So meta-medicine is the future medicine. And the future medicine will have to be perforce a combination, because Western medicine alone has become prohibitively expensive, and you can't go on with that. All that I wanted to make out is that if you combine various systems of medicine and a judicious combination, authenticate everything that you do. You shouldn't be a quack. You must authenticate scientifically everything that you want to incorporate into this new system called meta-medicine. I think the future is very bright for mankind on this planet.
Friends, medicine is one area which needs a lot of change. After all, change, if you go to the dictionary and see what life is, ceaseless change till death. You keep on changing every day, and with that, society also changes, and we need change a lot. I always say, don't go to the doctor for asking for health, don't go to the police asking for honor, and don't go to the judge for justice. If you are ill, go to the doctor. If you have somebody has harmed you, then go to the police. And if some injustice is done to you, go to the court. Similarly, when I became a doctor more than half a century ago, it's little over 60 years now, I found there are a lot of change needed in medicine. Because what we used to do is, we used to get our patients, to get more patients, we used to frighten them. And the whole thing, medicine depended on fear. Fear of disease in the first place, and that's why you go for a checkup. Fear of dying is the biggest fear, and you go to every doctor the minute you think you will die. Last is the fear of not knowing what is in store for you. So we cash in on this fear and make money, although our ethics says do not make money in the sick room. That's where we make all our money. So medicine was in a bad shape in the 19th century. Actually, to be precise, in 1823, they took a statistic in London. Very few doctors were there. They found that these doctors were incompetent, corrupt, and very, very dangerous. And one of them thought, a young doctor, thought that these were an abscess on the human body and they were killing the human body. So he said, I'm going to start a science journal to teach them science so that they change and the world will become better. So he started a journal called Lancet, The Lancet. Lancet means a knife. So that was the name of the very famous journal, started in 1823. And his name was James Wakeley. So Wakeley died and the journal continued on and off with little difficulty for 185 years now. So the present day Dr. Horton wanted to find out what has happened to doctors after Lancet started and science came in, so-called science came in. So the audit now shows that what was once an abscess on the human body with a corrupt bunch of doctors has transformed itself into a corporate monstrosity which is killing people all over the world. Today you go into a corporate hospital, even if you sneeze, they'll do every test under the sun and then give you a huge bill. And more so if you are insured, you're finished. Medical insurance is the biggest danger thing because they find out, are you insured? Yes, then we'll do all the tests. Are you rich? We'll do all the tests. And the best part of the whole story is that the poor man doesn't suffer the medical industry. And that's the only saving grace in our country. So what I did was I tried to sort of change the science of medicine and did a lot of work and published about 250 science journals, articles in various journals all over the world. Nothing happened, nothing happened. Then I thought I'll educate the doctors and the medical students. So I went around medical colleges all over the world, right from America down to the eastern countries, except probably South America and China. And then also nothing happened. Then the last thing I did in the last about 20 years is I tried to educate the consumer. And that has paid rich dividends. What I have done now is I have got more than a few million respondents who listen to my talk and find out and get educated so that they don't become bakras in the doctor's hands. I'll give one for example. Everybody is told you have a block in the heart vessel. But for your information, the block in the heart vessel has nothing whatsoever to do with the heart attack. And block in the heart vessel is something different. Coronary artery blocks are different from coronary artery disease. They are poles apart. But we frighten people because that's the only thing that we can make money with. And today corporate hospitals run on cardiac interventions. In America, they found that bypass surgery and angioplasty are done only to keep the till moving and get millions of dollars of income for the hospitals and doctors, and not for benefiting the patient, because we have known now bypass surgery does not do anything other than remove the pain. If the pain is something that you can't remove by other means, then bypass surgery is a must. But then we do bypass surgery for everybody who has a block. Angioplasties are not to be done at all. Recent studies have shown angioplasty is unscientific. And we also now know that angioplasty and bypass surgery are both just placebo effects. So ultimately I came to realize That is the human mind that works in disease, in wellness, etc., etc. But where is the mind? That's the question. And even today, we don't know where exactly is the mind. Do you believe that? A man who said the mind is in the brain, Wilder Penfield, the Canadian surgeon, got the Nobel Prize. But after 10 years, he found out that he was wrong. And he wrote an article saying that, sorry for writing what I did. And the mind is not in the brain because brain is a small organ which can't hold the mind. So mind is everywhere. Mind is universal. Mind is a canvas on which your thoughts are projected. And mind is consciousness. And when consciousness came into science, mind had a new connotation. But even today, what do we do? For mental illnesses, we still give chemical drugs. What do? They go to the brain and damage the brain. So there's a professor of neurosurgery and neuropsychiatry. This girl, Grace Elizabeth Jackson in New York University, she wrote a book, Dementia, a drug-induced crime on mankind by doctors. We say, oh, he has got dementia, he has got Alzheimer's disease. This is all created by us by the chemicals that we give. Every chemical that we give is dangerous. So I said, why not take the help of other systems of medicine also, even there's something good about it. So I looked at the reason why modern so-called Western medicine has become dominant, because it's the money power of the drug lobby that has made it, and the government helped it. The American government helped it. Actually, there was a demand in the American Constitution itself to demand that this monopoly of medical treatment should not be there, but that was deleted because the drug lobby worked, because drug lobby was held by the richest people in America. And even today, the drug lobby is the one that runs science. And you all say Western medicine is evidence-based, Indian medicine is not evidence-based. What is evidence? It is the evidence that is created. You can create evidence. For example, for 50 years I have been saying cholesterol is not a disease. Coconut oil is the best oil because coconut oil and mother's milk contain the same fatty acid. So coconut oil can't be bad, and other oils are not good. But nobody believed. They laughed at me. Now United States of America has found out that's true, and now everybody says coconut oil is good. Coconut oil prices have gone up skyrocketing because America has said that. So we want everything come from America because we are 200, nearly 300 years of Western rule. We have become mental slaves. We have become politically independent for the politicians, but not for you and me. You and me are still resident non-Indians. RNI, I call you. You are staying here, but thinking with the American mind or the English mind. This RNI mentality has to change. Now, if you go deep and find out what happened was, in the 50s, it was found that sugar is very bad for the heart. Sugar is a poison, which is true. But the sugar lobby got worried. So they hired 3 scientists, so-called quote-unquote scientists. Who is a scientist? I'll tell you later. If I forget, remind me. 3 scientists to create a myth saying that fat is bad, not the sugar. So they created a beautiful thing called cholesterol, fat, and even today, a lot of people call me and say, my fat profile is bad, doctor. I said, what is the fat profile? Don't worry, if it is bad, it's good for you. You will live long. But they worry about it. Then we have a drug for everything. So we always believe that, or the patient believes that the pill for every ill. And I changed that to say that while there is no pill for every ill, there is an ill following every pill. Even aspirin has got so much of side effects. The people used to swallow an aspirin tablet after the age of 40 to keep the heart attack away. The audit shows while aspirin may or may not reduce the heart attack rate, it will 10% of aspirin takers certainly get fatal cerebral hemorrhage, brain hemorrhage. I have lost a very important educationist, a patient of mine, who was vice chancellor of so many universities in Karnataka, very important man, very nice man. He was given aspirin. So I told him and his family, please stop that aspirin. But they wouldn't listen because they said, no, our doctors have given it, we should take it. He continued, and one day he was phoning up a friend of his in the evening and then just collapsed and became unconscious. And when scan showed, he had bled into his brain completely, and the brain was completely suppressed by the brain, and he died on the spot. So this is what is happening. So even aspirin, so don't take medicines unnecessarily. Take medicines very carefully. Then I said, you know, what are the common things? An audit in Canada showed that when a doctor sees one patient, a heart attack patient in society, he will have seen 36,000 common illness syndromes, which are called minor illness syndromes. We don't even teach that in the medical school. We teach about the coronary artery branches or the facial artery branches, but not about minor illness syndromes. What are the minor illness syndromes? Common cold, feverish cold, flu-like illness, sore throat. And for all these things, today we go to a hospital doctor and get so many medicines or television advertisements. सिर में दर्द है, हाँ यार, ये भी है, हाँ हाँ यार, और भी ये है, हाँ हाँ यार, तो 5 दवा लेना, एक नहीं. Take these 5, and it swallows that, and immediately the whole thing becomes normal. So you believe that. Actually, these are all. It was Harvard University, one Professor Simon, who showed that our old granny's ginger is the best antiviral drug. Ginger. Ginger, pepper, and garlic together will probably solve most of these problems without any side effects at all. Last but not the least is the commonest thing that you get is a sore throat. And you go to a doctor and take an antibiotic. An antibiotic spoils your health. But you would be surprised to know that the best treatment for a sore throat is hot water sip. You sit quietly, take a mug of hot water. If you want, put a little lime in it to make it tasty, and keep on sipping for about an hour. When your throat becomes 1 degree centigrade higher, the viruses die and you are okay by afternoon. So simple. And all this is because we have wonderful treatments in other systems also, which we say do not have evidence base. Now we know the evidence base of Western medicine is evidence manufactured. I told you how fat became an evidence for heart disease. Similarly, all other medicines are like that. So all these things you have to spread now. So all this, I do an average every week at television view, and I do 1 or 2 YouTube videos. So all these go around, and now I got statistics say I got about 5 million people in the world who are influenced. I get calls from Australia, America, China, everywhere, and I get consultations on the YouTube, on email from all these places. Because I'm free, I'm doing this free, I just can't cope up with it because I get about 200, 250 email consultation requests every day. And people have a myth that saying that I don't have to see the doctor, my reports can be seen by the doctor. So I always tell them I have got a set written. I have not learned how to treat reports. I have learned how to treat a human being. And I don't believe in disease, but I believe in the patient. Hippocrates said, know thy patient more than his disease. And when once I know the patient, it's very easy to treat, because supposing I have a headache, I don't have to go for a tablet. I know if I know the person very well, and if I know that he and his wife are not getting on very well, I just have to pat him and say, why did you fight with your wife yesterday? Just take it easy, the headache will go. And I had a patient, a very important man in India. If I told his name, you'll all know, stand up. This man keeps seeing me every time I go to Chennai with, I have a small headache here. Yesterday again he came. He is 94. And he said, I have a small headache here. So I told him, dear sir, because you have a head, there must be an ache. And I have a treatment for that. He said, he is a colleague of our CNR Rao and all. So when CNR Rao got the Nobel Prize, what is it called? Bharat Ratna Award. This man did not get it. After that, the headache started. So I said, I would, if I have the power, request the government of India to give you a Bharat Ratna or whatever, Bharat Ratna or so, your headache will go. He laughed. And his assistant told me afterwards, sir, this is exactly our review also, but we can't tell it because he's a big man. That's the right treatment. So yesterday again he came. So I told him, don't you worry, nothing will happen. Your head is all right. And he has had all things, CAT scan, dog scan, PET scan. And each time he goes to the doctor and says, I have a headache, they scan his head. And I said, at this rate, you will have a cancer in the head because you've been scanning so many things. So this is the story. So if I know the person, I know the treatment which doesn't require medicines. My suggestion is you require as less medicine as possible. Life is very good. I had a stroke recently. I followed all the rules of the game to lead a healthy life. But one day I was lecturing like this in a college for about 2.5 hours. I was standing lecturing. After that, I went for a meal. Then I found my leg was a little weak. And there's a story started there. But anyway, I recovered, thank God. Let's cut the long story short. I've written an article about it. It's called Autopathographies. I've written how it happens and why it goes. All this is because it's in the mind. Ultimately, the mind is the seat of all the disease. And mind has to be corrected. So I was telling that scientist yesterday who saw me for a headache, I said, sir, we have all the gadgets, but we don't have a mindoscope. If you can get into your mind and see, decipher your mind, your headache will have gone. He said, yes, mindoscope, that's a very good idea. எங்க சொன்னீங்க? Then I said, no, சொல்லல, இப்பதான் ஆலோசனை பண்ணேன். உங்களை பார்த்து தான் ஆலோசனை பண்ணேன். See, that's how it happens. But mind you, this is very difficult to change. Change is difficult, very difficult. But these days we are better off. When in the 18th century, Simmel said, doctors don't wash their hands and that's why patients die. That other doctors thought he was mad and he was put into the mental hospital and he died there. But thank God they have not put me into the mental hospital, though they wanted to. When I first wrote 40 years ago, I wrote a book called What Doctors Don't Get to Study in Medical School. Such a bad review was there in Indian journals. They said this man is mad, he doesn't know medicine, he has to be put in jail, etc., etc. But then after a week, the British Medical Journal wrote a review on the same book, which said this is not a textbook of medicine, but this is holy text of medicine written by a prophet. Then Indians changed. Then they said, okay, that book must be good. So the book is in several editions now, but that didn't change much. You know, the day I changed myself, I was a young man and had a lot of degrees and things like that, and I had lost my head, and I didn't know who I was. But one day, a young lady lost her husband at 2 o'clock in the morning, absolutely fit person who had a massive heart attack and died at about 2 o'clock. My juniors called me and said, sir, please come, this lady is uncontrollable, you come. So I went there at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I had not put on my shoes. I had gone in my chappals, walked into the ICU. This lady was rolling on bed, and she caught hold of my, with a big grip of my ankle, and asked one profound question. Doctor, why did my husband die? I thought for a while, my God, with all my lore, I'm a bloody fool today. I don't know the answer to this question. If she had asked me, how did my husband get a heart attack, I would have given her a big lecture on what the textbooks say. But when she said why, I didn't know. So I went out into so many things, from teleology to philosophy, and found that ultimately a Nobel laureate physiologist said, positive sciences never answer the question why. They answer at best how or how much. I as a doctor can say, how does the heart contract? But I can't say, why does the heart contract? For to know why does the heart contract, you got to go to teleology. So that is where I went into Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, and now I find all these systems are equally good. Then I found a study done in Thailand where there are 5 systems of medicine concurrently working in society. Western medicine, pure Chinese medicine, integrated Western Chinese medicine, Samoa system where the father tells the son what to do, and quackery. And the study after 5 years showed that all these people are equally effective as long as they had interest in the patient. So I always tell my students after that, whether you like homeopathy, homopathy, Ayurveda, or whatever it is, as long as you have empathy and sympathy, you are a good doctor. Now my slogan to my medical students is, be a good human being, you are a good doctor. You don't have to have any big degree, etc. Because patient must have faith in you. When once he has faith in you, that's called the placebo effect, you will get cured. So many people said, oh, what is this man talking about? When I get bypass surgery done, it's bypass surgery done on me. So where is the placebo effect? My former chief in Harvard did a very good study. 600 people over the 5 years were sent for bypass surgery to Harvard Medical School. And he examined them and found none of them needed bypass surgery scientifically. But then they have come, they have paid the money. Anyway, the hospital has received the money. So we had 2 theaters, theater A and theater B. And he sent the patients blindly into 1 to A, said 2 to B. And the protocol in A was anesthetize, operate, send. Because those days we were doing with the laser beam, so you don't have to cut the chest. And B was anesthetize, keep him sleeping. When he wakes up, tell him he had a wonderful operation, send him home. And now after 10 years, they found that those who went to theater B had nothing. They were all normal. Their blood supply had come back to normal. Their scanning had become normal. But those who went to A, half of them did not get relief, so they had a cut open surgery. The other remaining half of them were in heaven with their maker. The remaining half are suffering from the drugs that they're receiving. So the conclusion was even bypass surgery is a placebo effect. And in India, it is definitely a placebo effect because after having paid 10 lakhs, if you don't get a placebo effect, you are not a human being. So friends, change is a must because knowledge, said Karl Popper, who was a physicist, became the professor of science philosophy in the London School of Economics in the 50s, and Colossus in that. He said, I quote, Karl Popper said, knowledge advances not by repeating known things, but by refuting false dogmas. Look at what the police commissioner did. The knowledge was that the crime statistics helps. Actually, that's what is being repeated even now in the papers, crime statistics. But he found out that it's a myth. Crime statistics doesn't really give the image of the police. So he changed that. So knowledge advances by changing myths and not by repeating own things. So a lot of myths in medicine, my dear friends, hell of a lot. And we have to change that. I'm trying to do that. Now I got a lot of followers. Medical students come to me and say, sir, can I get an internship with you for 2 months? I want to learn something, sir. And they bring their parents to me for consultation. And this is how the world changes. Medicine also changes, needs change, and everything else in life changes because life changes itself. Change is life. And there was a big case in the New York court between creationists and scientists. And the court, the judge in his wisdom gave a judgment saying that science has changed. Medicine has, creationist ideas have not changed. So you can't be scientific. You are just religion. And religion is not science. So friends, science has to change. And
well, knowledge advances, wrote Karl Popper way back in 1950s, not by repeating known things, but by refuting false dogmas. This is how knowledge advances. For example, it was said by Ptolemy in the 2nd century that the sun goes round the earth, which was followed for 500 years, up until Copernicus came and said, no, the other way around. So this has been going on like this. In medicine and in the area of health, this myth is perpetuating for nearly 2000 years now, from the time of the reductionist science of Descartes. What is health? There's a definition called Alma Ata definition of health. Health is absence of this disease, that disease, all kinds of diseases. If you analyze this, it's just a business definition, because if you want to know whether you're healthy or not, you must go for a checkup. And that's a big business, because you're checking up the whole population of the world, if you really can. Because if you're treating only the ill people, it's only a few million in a given day. So that's not the definition, but Indian system of Ayurveda for thousands of years had a beautiful definition, which simply means, in a sense, if you have enthusiasm to work, mark my words, and enthusiasm to be compassionate, you are healthy. You can have a disease because all of us have disease. If I now scan all of us for a cancer cell, each one of us will have more than 5 to 10 cancers already inside. But they don't become clinical cancers and kill you, they die themselves. And this is a very important thing. So on a given day, nobody is totally healthy, which if it means that without disease. So this definition of health is very convenient because you can know yourself in the morning. Get up and ask, do I want to go to work today or do I have to go to work? If you say, and I want to go to work, you're healthy. Do I have to be compassionate? If you say, yes, I have to be compassionate, that's compulsion. I want to be compassionate. And if you want to be compassionate, you're healthy again. Now, having said this, I must tell you the myths in the area of health. When you go and see a doctor, the first thing he asks is, did your father have cancer? Did your father had stroke? He had a heart attack? You get frightened. And if any one of these is positive, you start dying that day. I may get a cancer. I may get heart attack. I may get this. I may get a stroke. All this is myth. You and your parents have nothing in common because you are not come from your parents. Actually, this is the Indian thought. Children do not belong to parents. They come through parents. But our ancestors are not our parents, but the germs. This world for the first 2000 billion years was run by only germs. And every other planet is like that. And these are the germs which are very compassionate, and they donated a DNA each to us to make the first nucleated cell called the zygote that you and I were on the first day we were made in the mother's womb. And that one cell has become a colony in you of 120 trillion cells in association with 1200 trillion germ cells. So for every single cell of yours, that's human cell, you have 10 germ cells. So we are germs. And this germ theory propagated by the Western medicine to use antibiotics as medicines is the one that is killing mankind all over the world because of superbugs. Now germs are our friends, and germs have brought us here, and we belong to them. So you don't have to worry about your family history of this disease or that disease, because there's a big myth going on saying that your genetic analysis, your genome studies, your genetic engineering, stem cell study, preserving your cord blood of your child, preserving your dead body, etc., is a multi-billion-dollar industry. All that is a myth. What is true today is, if you are healthy today, you are lucky. If you are unhealthy today, you are lucky. There's nothing that you can do to preserve your health or continue it. But one thing is, health is environmental. Health is not genetic. You are not inherited from your parents. Health is purely environmental. In this context, we again talk of, and we have been talking about, the risk factors. Your heart disease, your hypertension, diabetes, body weight, height, weight, mass index, your girth of the abdomen, girth of your all kinds of things we talk about. All this has been again proved wrong because a largest study, the longest study and the biggest study, which is called the MR-FIT study, Mr. Fit study, multiple risk factor intervention trial, which went on for prospective of 25 years, showed that there isn't anything called risk factor. Even if you remove the risks by intervention, the risk, if anything, remains. So even if you whether remove the risk factor or not, the risk remains. But the only thing that can save you is change your lifestyle. This is because lifestyle is the biggest environment. What is the environment of the human body? Human body is in fact human mind only. With quantum physics, we have quantum understanding. Matter is energy, energy is matter. For such of you who don't belong to the science stream, I'll give you a nice article, please read this. Matter is not made out of matter. That's the article. Matter is not made out of matter. Written by a man who got the Nobel Prize and the alternate Nobel Prize. Because he called E is equal to M, energy is matter, matter is energy, as a duality. And the man has written this article so for you, and in the article he writes, I quote, he says, I am just a scientist, like a child playing in the sands, the sand time. But the Indian sages have called this Advaita thousands of years ago, and he says, that is the philosophy that runs quantum physics. And your body is a holographic projection of your mind, which is called your consciousness. And the mind is not in the brain as we think and as we practice in psychiatry. We give you drugs when you have some mental problems. These drugs go and affect the brain where the mind is not there, and the brain gets damaged. So the drugs only damage the brain and do not treat you. As a matter of fact, create more problems. But what is important is the mind is the environment of the body. I am repeating this. The mind is the environment of the body. So if you have to get any disease to the mind and to the body, it's again the mind that affects the whole thing. And if you want to get rid of it, you have to change your mind. So in short, mind your mind, and that will mind your illness and wellness. Now, what is the most important part of the mind? Your thinking. The most dangerous part of the environment of mind is arrogance, hubris. I. You know, I. You all know I. I starts illness. You just change that I into we, wellness. That's all the difference. Did you understand? The difference between illness and wellness is how you look at yourself. If you think you are the biggest man under the sun, you are always ill. Remember that. Almost all our politicians have got all kinds of illnesses. You don't know them. They take so many drugs. Now you think there is a drug for everything, so why worry? One patient came to me once and said, look doctor, I want to drink, I want to smoke, but I don't want to get diseases. Give me a pill. This is how people think, because they think there is a pill for every ill. But the reality is, while there is no pill for every ill, there is an ill following every pill. And this is true because every pill is a reductionist chemical. And studies have shown when you take a pill, irrespective of what pill it is, from aspirin to the statins or whatever, it goes inside the system and the body's wisdom says, oh, this doesn't belong to me, I don't know, this is a poison, So it must be destroyed, it sends to the liver. So every tablet that you take, every injection that you take, the drug chemical goes to the liver and damages the liver. And today there is an epidemic called non-alcoholic cirrhosis of the liver. It is a very dangerous disease. There is no treatment at all. The only treatment now they claim is liver transplant. And all this is because today we have a huge disease called adverse drug reactions, ADR. And the ADR is the leading cause of death in the world. And this is because we think wrongly that the disease can be corrected by correcting the body. The disease cannot be corrected by correcting the body. Disease can only be corrected by correcting the mind. And this was shown in elegant studies. And it's also shown that the disease is cured by your own system. Remember that? It's not the outside system. Your own system cures the disease. And this is very interesting. They did a large study in Oxford University with the collaboration with Oxford, Cambridge, Munich and Hamburg universities, led by Oxford's Professor Bengel. And this study they showed that a patient has severe pain, the worst pain that you can have, because pain is man's greatest enemy. Yesterday pain was the enemy, today pain is the enemy, and in your tomorrow also pain will be the enemy of mankind. And our job is cure rarely, comfort mostly, but console always. Even a patient with cancer, I can console him. Even a patient with any kind of pain today, I can relieve. But I was thinking, up until this study came out, that we are treating pain. On the contrary, what's happening is this study elegantly showed that patient had severe pain and they were giving him intravenous drip of morphine. Morphine is the best painkiller. But they told the patient, this is not morphine. What we are giving you is a new vitamin we have found out for your disease. It will not remove your pain, but your disease will go. And would you believe nobody's pain went? Pain did not disappear, but morphia was going intravenously. If you take a tablet of morphia, your pain will go. Then they were surprised. So they did a crossover study. They ran a saline drip, simple saline drip, and told the patient, this is the best salt of morphine that we have discovered. And your pain will go like that. And would you believe the pain went like that? They were nonplussed, what's happening? So they repeated the whole study with an fMRI, concurrent fMRI. fMRI tells you what the brain is doing. And when they found that morphine was running, but the patient believed, mark my words, believed, because he had faith in the doctor that it's not morphine. When he believed it's not morphine, the brain slept. When saline was going and the doctor told him it's morphine, and he believed the doctor, and then pain got relieved because the forebrain produced such powerful opioids that in no time the pain went. So who treated the pain? Not the drug, but your own brain, your own body, your own immune system. Similarly, surgery. You think surgery, okay, surgery is something different. No, they did a study, extensive study like this on bypass surgery. And they showed even bypass surgery is a placebo effect. Nothing happens by the surgery, but the placebo effect. The mind says, okay, I am treated. I've had a bypass surgery, nothing to worry about it. This is a very nice study called Placebo Effect in Bypass Surgery, and the first author's name is Grabos. Grabos is a very big director of interventional cardiology in Harvard. And this study shows that when a patient was taken to the theater, anesthetized, and when he woke up, he was told, you had a wonderful bypass surgery. Your surgery was very successful. And he went home, and he's successful. 1 year later, scanning showed blood supply had come back to the heart, which means you are treating your own self, which is called the placebo effect. If anyone is trying to check this, there's an article called Placebo Effect in Science Translational Medicine, very important journal. It's 2011 is the year, volume is 3, page is 70. And the first author's name is Bingel, B-I-N-G-E-L. He is a professor of medicine in Oxford. All this goes to show now that the myth that we are doing everything and every tablet, every disease requires a pill is all a myth. Having said all this, what is the future? What's your tomorrow? Now we have to get a generation of future generation trained to have a healthy mind. Today, what's the training in the medical college or engineering college or IIT? I was asking a girl a little while ago, what are you trying to do? I'm in biomedical engineering and I'm looking at hospital equipment to see whether we can change that and do something better. These equipment do nothing. As a matter of fact, some of these equipments are the bane for our, you simply scan people. You know, in the olden days, there wasn't anything called multiple cysts in the ovary, this, that, and all. Patient is fine, patient is doing well, but the scan shows something. Is there any woman who does not miss a single ovum coming out of the ovary and making a cyst in it? No, there isn't. But we didn't know that she had a disease. Now, routine screening, everybody has an ultrasound scanning, and they say, cyst in the ovary. The doctor will assure you, don't worry, this cyst is nothing. As you are turning to go, he says, occasionally it may become a cancer. And that's finished. You are dead after that. Every day you're thinking, my cyst has become a cancer, my cyst has become a cancer. How many of you suffer from gallbladder stones? Most people, you know, they have died at the age of 100 with full gallbladder full of stones. Nothing has happened to them. But today they won't let you. One stone is picked up. And then the man says, do I get this stone out or leave it alone? Then the doctor says, oh, don't worry, nothing will happen. But sometimes, you know, it can come out and block your common bile duct and produce something, and pancreatitis and things like that. And that kills you. So friends, what we have to do is, new generation must be trained. You and I are gone because, you know, we are spoiled in this present generation, because up until I went to school, I was supposed to be a genius. I went to school and became an idiot. Because all our intuition is gone, all questioning is gone, curiosity is gone. We are only fed what is to be fed. This is what the Roman Empire started. Socrates started educere. Educe means bring out the best in man. That's called education. Swami Vivekananda said, education is a manifestation of the perfection which is already in man. But the educare system said, teach the child what you want the child to know. And we are continuing that educare. And you put in stuff in things. And this stuffing in things is not education. We have to bring the best out of the child. And that's why you have to use the child as your best friend. And don't use the child as a student in the class to be admonished, to be disciplined and things like that. No, he's your friend. Leave him alone to do. I have seen a school called the Primrose School in London, where the child comes and says, today I want to swim, teacher. And the child swims. There's a swimming pool, everything is there. The child swims the whole day, it doesn't matter. It gets the attendance. Another child says, I want to paint, teacher, today. So the paint is provided, everything, canvas is provided. And another child says, I want to play chess, it plays chess. Another child says, I want to go cycling, it goes cycling. And that's how a child should be groomed. But ultimately, what you should do is to have a child with a healthy mind, not just a wealthy career. Today, our aim is only wealthy career. This morning, I was seeing the paper. Our students are not now industry, they are not ready for industry from the institutions. They want to train you to fit into an industry. Supposing that industry collapses, what do you do? Education is not just training for a job. Education is making a human being out of you. And that's called education must make a healthy mind. What is a healthy mind? Enthusiasm to work and enthusiasm to be compassionate. Imagine all the 1.3 billion people in India become healthy minded. What will happen? We have so many people to work. Today, even 2% of the people don't want to work. They have to work, that's a different thing. They don't want to work. If 100% of the people in India want to work, and 100 people want to be compassionate, where is terrorism? Where is rape? Where is problems? Where is criminal? Nobody. And even probably the politicians will change. So let us create a generation of healthy minds. And if you have a healthy mind, you have a healthy body. And that's where it is. The usual saying, in a healthy body, there is a healthy mind, is not wrong. It's the other way around. When a healthy mind and a healthy body, they reside together, diseases disappear. And you become very, very tranquil, very nice. I'm coming back to where I started. There are a lot of myths in the field of health and also in the field of diseases. Most diseases are our friends. Don't hate diseases. Love diseases. And tell the disease, let's be friends. And my immune system will cure you. And if you develop your immune system, it will certainly cure you. The whole of Ayurveda is based on this principle. And what does it say? Aptopasevi bhavet arogyam. Treat everyone as your near and dear ones. You will be healthy and the whole world will be healthy and nothing to worry about any part. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity. It was very